Chapter 8: Will's New Education. About a fortnight after the wedding, Lord BraitheWaite asked William and Jessica to have tea at the manor. He said he had something to request of them which he felt would extend their business together and provide Will with additional skills that he felt would be worthwhile to the young man. After they had been seated and tea and cake served, Lord BraitheWaite said, "I must first tell you of what I plan to ask Will to do for me. While there are benefits and a good wage to be earned with educational opportunities, there is an important secondary reason for my asking. I wish Will to take a position in one of the firms in which I have invested interest. I own a major portion of the stock of a shipbuilding firm in Bristol. It has been a profitable venture for me for several years. However, I have always had questions and some doubts as to the honesty of one of my junior partners and his yard manager. I have been willing to overlook certain, shall we say, perquisites to oil the wheels. The firm recently received a contract to build several ships for His Majesty's fleet. I would like someone beside my money's clerk on the inside to be my eyes and ears during the project. I don't think the risk to be great, but still, I thought I should discuss this with you before I speak to Will. I would also say that I will make sure Will has a position that would allow him to take with him one servant as a helper." William knew exactly whom Lord BraitheWaite was referring to and knew his mentor recognized the value of the team of Will and May Lee. Lord BraitheWaite was one of the few people who had seen May Lee disguised as a boy when required to do so. He knew she would guard Will's life with her own. Both William and his lordship understood that many men would kill to protect their evil doing from exposure, even if it was only the theft of a few copper coins. "Since Will has been helping you with the modeling for your recent projects, I wish to send him to London to train as a warrant officer and shipwright. Once he has some additional training, I want him to discuss the plans and oversee the creation of models that the shipwrights and carpenters will use. For the next month, I wish Will to London and tutor with old Pett, the King's shipwright and model maker. He is a good friend and will stuff every scrap of information possible into Will's head in the shortest amount of time. He will provide books for Will to study to help with his new position. I have every confidence that Will can succeed in accomplishing both the task of modeling and finding the information I need for the purposes of my investigation." William knew that the ship's models were necessary in several ways, primarily because few carpenters and their helpers could read or understand the use of anything but their hands as measurement. So, plans and drawing were useless in the yard. Even ships built from the same plans and from the same models never turned out the same. The second reason for the models, and just as important, was money. The grander the model, the easier it was to sell the project shares to merchants or the monarch who supplied the gold for wages and materials. His lordship explained, "I will provide Will with extra gold for expenses and copper for the snitches he will need to hire to keep us informed. He will receive regular wages from the company, and in addition, I will pay into his London account a sum double that." "When?" William asked. "I would like to speak to Will tomorrow, and if he agrees, he and his servant will leave for London the following day." Upon returning home that evening, William told his son, Lord BraitheWaite wished to speak with him the following day. Will started to question his father, but William protested, "Just wait and speak to his lordship, and then we'll discuss his proposition." So, the next day Will rode out to the manor to meet with Lord BraitheWaite. Will was escorted into the lordship's office by his manservant. Will silently thought the man's face looked as if it had melted. His jowls hung almost 2 inches below his chin, giving him the look of an old bulldog. Will smiled and sat in the chair where the bulldog told him to sit. The bulldog said in a low, growling voice, "His lordship will be with you presently," and bowed slightly and left the room. Will was looking around the office and noticed a set of ship construction plans that sat on the large desk in front of him, and wondered again what was such a mystery that his father couldn't tell him last night. He stood to get a better look at the plans, and Lord BraitheWaite walked in and said, "Oh, please be seated. There is no need to stand on ceremony. We are almost family." Will knew Lord BraitheWaite thought he had risen at his entry and smiled inwardly. Will said, "Your lordship," as they shook hands. Will returned to his seat after pulling it forward a bit so he could continue to see the plans on the desk without seeming to do so. It was Lord BraitheWaite's turn to smile as he saw the curiosity building in the young man before him. Lord BraitheWaite had known Will his entire life and was fond of him, as he was of William's entire family. His lordship said, "Will, I know I can trust you not to speak of anything we discussed today with anyone other than your family." It was a statement, not a question, but Will gave a nod of assent anyway. "As you may know from your father, I own a major portion of a shipbuilding company in Bristol, and as I told your father last night, I am beginning to have some reservations about my junior partner and his yard manager. The profits have dropped substantially on the last several projects. We have recently entered into an agreement to build several ships for His Majesty's Navy, and I need someone who is knowledgeable to be my eyes and ears in the company during the construction of these vessels. Any problems could cause dire consequences for my company and me personally. Monarchs whose pockets have been picked don't always abide by company rules, and the head at the top is usually the first to roll. I don't wish to run afoul of King on any account. I know at this time you don't have complete education in this area, so I have conspired a means for you to gain the knowledge you will need to take a position of responsibility. You must hold a position within the company with enough status to gain access to the information needed to protect my interests. I told your father I don't believe these men are corrupt to the point of violence, but one never can judge other men's thresholds for such actions. I need someone who is intelligent and who could take care of themselves in, shall we say, situations." To this Will laughed out loud, and so did Lord BraitheWaite. His lordship rang a small bell on his desk, and the bulldog came into the room and growled, "Yes, me lord." "Tea," Lord BraitheWaite asked Will, "or perhaps brandy?" "Tea will be fine, thank you," and the bulldog left to fetch the tea. After the bulldog had departed on his errand, Lord BraitheWaite continued, "I have created a warrant officer's position within the company to be a liaison between the Admiralty and the design firm. You will work on the construction plans and build the working models to be used in the yard. These are preliminary drawing, as you have no doubt noticed." Lord BraitheWaite paused for effect and peered at Will with a smile. Will returned a sheepish smile. He'd been caught peeking, and he thought he'd been so clever. "You'll have to manage men who have been building ships much longer than you've been alive and command their respect. I believe you can do this." Will began to protest that he had not the education or knowledge, but his lordship cut him off and explained, "You'll be sent to London for the next month and tutor with the King's retired shipwright, Peter Pett, and his son Phineas. They are long-time friends and will help you understand every aspect of this position and will provide books for your study. I have every confidence in you, Will, and I know you will do your best to succeed in accomplishing the task ahead. Once you have been well tutored, you'll return to our Bristol yard as my warrant officer and model shipwright. You will be provided with an office in Bristol, enough for the position but away from the eyes of the main company offices. As for money, you'll be paid a decent wage by the company and provided with additional gold to pay for your travels and secure whatever you need. I will make sure of your transportation, providing a proper carriage when traveling on behalf of the company. You'll always have sufficient private quarters for yourself and your manservant." Will looked up at the mention of a servant and knew what his lordship meant as they looked into each other's eyes. "I want you to have every advantage possible and someone to watch your back." And he smiled. "I don't feel it is exceptionally dangerous, but one never knows." The bulldog returned with the tea and growled, "Tea, my lord? And you, young sir, will you have cream, sugar?" After handing each man a cup, he departed. When his servant left the room, his lordship continued, "You'll also be provided with coppers each month, as I wish you to build a network of snitches and informants. I was hoping your servant might be helpful along these lines, and he'll be rewarded well for his labors." Again, Will knew exactly what his lordship was saying, and knew before he accepted this offer he would need to speak with Mei Li. She was a free person, not a slave, and he could not command her and never thought of doing so. He loved Mei Li, and he would be putting her safety at risk as well as his own. He understood the unstated. He would be a spy for Lord BraitheWaite. If they were found out, he and Mei Li might have what his lordship had so jokingly called a situation. While this seemed like a wonderful adventure to Will, inside he wondered if Mei Li would see it in the same light and was not so sure she would. She always tended to be a bit overprotective when it came to the welfare of Will and his family. While he knew he could persuade her, he wanted it to be her own choice to go with him, or he would have to find another man to travel as his servant. This thought made Will decidedly uncomfortable. Maylie had been with him all his life. Lord BraitheWaite stood and said, "Will, I want you to go home and discuss this with your family and let me know your decision first thing in the morning. I wish you in London as soon as possible if you agree." Will rose and knew the meeting had ended. The bulldog returned to usher him out, and soon Will was on his horse and on the road home. Chapter 9. Will Goes to London. Will spent half the night talking with his family and Maylie. William felt this was a grand opportunity for his son. Jessica and Maylie saw things from a different perspective and had reservations about the dangers involved. Will, of course, was excited and was perfectly willing to take on the challenge, and so argued. They all decided to sleep on it, although most had a sleepless night. At dawn, Maylie woke Will, and the two of them went into the kitchen to have some tea and talk. Will had the previous day. "Will, your heart is set on adventure, but do you really understand the life of a spy?" "Of course I don't. I've had no experience in such matters, but I'll be working in a position that will provide me with access to education otherwise not available to me. I think the risk is small, as I'm assured I'll be among other men loyal to his lordship. His lordship assured me I'm not required to confront any wrongdoing, just to keep my eyes open and provide reports to his lordship on the daily workings of the company and his clerks." Will asked hopefully, "You'll be with me, won't you?" Maylie looked at Will and said, "Of course, if that is the wish of your father." Maylie still felt an obligation to William for her freedom and would seek his approval before leaving. They had dressed and packed, they saddled the horses and rode to Lord BraitheWaite's home, where they were ushered into his office by the bulldog, and were soon joined by his lordship. "Good morning, Will," and nodded to Maylie, who returned the gesture. "Have you had breakfast?" Will told him that he had. "Well, some tea then." "No, thank you," Will said. "Well, to our business at hand then, my boy. I can see in your eyes and by your clothing you're ready to go. Here is the gold you will require for your expenses." He handed Will a heavy purse with what felt to be a small fortune in gold. "Upon your arrival in London, I wish you to see my tailor. You need clothes made befitting your new position. Once that is underway, I wish you to go and visit my agent about lodgings for yourself and your manservant." And he winked at Maylie, who was again dressed as a boy. Lord BraitheWaite marveled at the way Maylie could blend and adapt to her surroundings so convincingly as to become almost invisible. "My coach and driver will take you to London as soon as you are ready. I took the liberty of having a food basket put aboard for your travel comfort. I hope it will meet your needs." Within an hour, Will, with Maylie beside him, were headed for London and a new adventure. Will looked at this lavish coach and knew they were traveling in luxury. The coach had cordovan leather seats padded with horsehair for comfort, and a finely finished wood interior with curtained windows. It was designed with the latest in suspension for a more comfortable ride, even on the terrible roads to London. Will thought it must have cost more than double a year's wages, but sat back and enjoyed the luxury for the first time in his life. He sipped the wine supplied in the basket along with bread, fine cheese, and fresh meat pies. Maylie had packed fresh vegetables from her garden that she ate and offered to Will. She warned him that eating too much of the rich food might cause problems he didn't want while traveling. So, Will, with some disappointment, ate sparingly of the food on the coach. When they arrived in London, they met with the company's London office representatives, James Derry, Phineas Brown, and Oliver Knowles. They gave him such an enthusiastic greeting, it made Will extremely wary. They served high tea, with several different types of biscuits, cakes, and pies. Will asked for boiling water, and Maylie made fresh tea for him. The men looked almost offended when Will ate little and drank only the tea prepared by Maylie. Will played up his country bumpkin image a bit as instructed by his lordship during their early meeting. The three men looked at each other and soon were talking among themselves, hardly addressing Will at all. Will thought them stupid to be fooled so easily, overly self-important and boorish, but it was part of the plan Lord BraitheWaite had set out. Even though the visit was unimportant, news of the meeting would travel back to the Bristol office. Lord BraitheWaite wanted the news that Will was a country bumpkin and was no threat to the schemes of the junior partner and his yard manager at the Bristol office. Will excused himself, saying, "We've had a long trip, even if we did travel in Lord BraitheWaite's fine coach. I would like to find my quarters as soon as possible, settle in, and get some sleep. I'm pleased to have met you and will give your regards to his lordship on my return to Bristol." After contacting his lordship's agent, they were directed to their new lodgings. It was a fine house with 3 bedrooms, an office or study, dining room, and kitchen. A kitchen staff would normally come with the home, but Will told Lord BraitheWaite that Mei Lee would prepare all their meals. Will was tired, so he lay down on the couch in the study and was soon snoring almost as loud as his father. Mei Lee slipped out the kitchen door and began to walk the neighborhood. She felt uncomfortable in this new territory and wanted to know as much about the area as possible. She was dressed as a servant boy and carried her ever-present bamboo staff. She found the marketplace the poor used and began to haggle over the price of vegetables and fresh fish for their dinner. She paid with some of the copper coins and talked with the vendors about the possibility of finding an additional servant for the house. She was directed to a man whose stall had a variety of items, from used pots and pans to books and to a silver tea set. Mei Lee thought they were most likely stolen goods. The man was almost toothless with a nasty scar across his cheek and smelled like month-old dead fish. Mei Lee instinctively didn't like the man, and when he offered to sell her a small boy, she left his stall. She knew that the boy would be a plant in the house to set them up for burglary, as the boy looked as mangy as his father. She walked back to the house and soon set fire in the brazier, cleaned the fish, and set about preparing their evening meal. Will awoke and came in to talk with her about her impressions of the 3 men they met earlier. Their eyes showed they did not speak the truth. They smelled afraid of you when we arrived and had no respect. They will now not be so cautious. It's as planned. Thank you for joining me for another chapter of There's a Pirate in the Family. I hope you enjoyed today's adventure as much as I enjoyed bringing it to you. If this story carried you away, made you smile, or kept you wondering what comes next, please take a moment to like, subscribe, and tap that notification bell so you never miss an episode. And I truly want to hear from you. Tell me where you're listening from and what part of the story captured your imagination today. Your comments help shape the journey ahead. Until next time, keep your compass steady, your curiosity sharp, and your heart open to adventure. This is There's a Pirate in the Family, and the voyage continues soon.